Hello, hello. Hi, lady. Okay, here I am, Frantz Kantor here again, cartoonist, illustrator, yada yada yada, tinker tailor spy, and I'm going to do another drawing, another caricature. So I like caricatures because they teach me quite a lot. Okay, so the subject of today, as you can probably tell from this thumbnail, is this fellow here, which is Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis, of course, is a comedian. So he was born in 1926 and died quite recently in 2017. There he is there. These are some fantastic, we'll look at those in a minute. They're the Hirschfeld caricatures, which I like to study because it's very interesting. So I haven't seen all of his films, obviously, or television appearances, but some notable mentions would be in 1949, My Friend Irma. My Friend Irma Goes West. And then there's a whole bunch of... he actually did in a Road to Bali, we did a cameo. Did a few cameos, including It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. He was in The Stooge in the 50s and also part writer as well as an uncredited writer. Scared Stiff, The Caddy, Money from Home, Living It Up, Three Ring Circus, Artists and Models, of course. There was a lot of partners, a lot of films with Dean Martin. Hollywood or Bust, Sad Sack. And then he started to make films as himself, as a filmmaker, so producer, director, etc. The Geisha Boy. He did a lot of cameos, like Lil Abner was a cameo in there. Visit to a Small Planet, Bellboy, Cinderfella, Errand Boy. So I remember The Delicate Delinquent in 1957. That was with, I think, Darren McGavin, who played a policeman. I like that. It was kind of like growing up in the 70s. You're familiar with Jerry Lewis. It's Saturday afternoon, after all the cartoons are finished, and just before maybe the horror films or sci-fi films, you get an Elvis film or a Jerry Lewis film. So you kind of grow up with them, and you know they're interesting. A lot of his films he made on his own. Of course, he achieved a lot of acclaim in Europe, in France in particular, and because they saw him as a sort of a French version of Jacques Tati. And that's an interesting analogy, I think, because they're very reflective. Jacques Tati films are they're humorous, they're very funny, a lot of physical humor. There's a lot of physical humor, obviously, with Jerry Lewis. And there's an awful lot of reflection. So it's kind of like, you know, we're laughing at the clown, but the clown has a sad side, and then we discover the sad side, and then we feel empathy for the clown at the end. We feel sorry for him. So he's a very interesting man, Jerry Lewis. These are the Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Al Hirschfeld caricatures. You could see that in the heyday in the 1950s. Incredible, body language. Very, very almost self-deprecating style of humor, but incredibly physical. And, loves to occupy that space, that stage, whether it be a tight shot on his face or, full body. So there's a lot of this, this overblown sadness that they're trying to elicit. Again, a lot of the comedians used caricatures or cartoons of themselves, including Lucille Ball, which was our last subject, as sort of logos, which is interesting. I wonder who else does that. Oh well. This is him with Sammy Davis Jr. He's another great subject too. He's brilliant, working in the space of the stage. the way that they can, like a cartoon character, really fill up that screen, that small screen, with their personality and their actions and emotions and things like that. Sammy Davis was very, very good at that. And very iconic, you know, he had this sort of incredible profile, which, you know, if you look at that, it's kind of like as iconic as I don't know, Charles Aznavour or Barbara Streisand or someone like that. So they use that to their advantage. So he's this very even-featured Jerry, and you know that's an interesting challenge, really. And out of this seemingly normal persona explodes this zany personality. So, you know, he's very, very much in control of his energy. So he kind of worked out this personality, this stage persona, and really milked it, you know, and it worked really, really well, and created obviously a great contrast with Dean Martin. He's another very interesting subject. This is him with Judy Kahn. This is obviously the Nutty Professor. So it's the Nutty Professor before the more recent one, I think, in the 90s. Another interesting character. It's very, you know, it's unbelievable the way that he would be able to distort this face. You can see with the configuration, there's a lot of muscles there, which you would obviously expect in an actor, and definitely in a comedian. This is him in his later years. Again, you know, very even featured. Nothing drooping or falling apart. He had this sort of pathos-inducing expression with the little eyebrows pinching up. So, you know, that's an interesting thing. And he had every time, if like he would be, he's the kind of guy that I think would be hard to photograph as a serious topic, because I don't think he would allow that mask to drop. So if this is a mask, I tend to think it's less a mask, more therapy than anything else. This sort of happy, zany persona. There seems to be like a lot of experimentation in the early days, obviously, with you know, these expressions. I quite like that. That's probably the more pensive, you know, it's sort of like the comedian after the show or before the show. There's a little bit of nervousness, you can tell from the brow, furrowed brow. But there's also a lot of determination there as well. It's a very interesting face overall, I think. It's a good subject. That's Buddy Love, the alter ego for the Nutty Professor. So I've actually chosen, we'll go through some of these photographs. Nutty Professor again with, oh my gosh, I've forgotten their name. So he's very interesting. I like this. I like this expression a lot, because it's sort of in between the explosion, and that's, I think, too young, that expression. So I've kind of opted for this one, and it's a little bit blurry, so bear with me. That's the one I'm going to sort of try to work with. So we'll move our reference across. Now, when you're drawing, obviously, from photographs or reference, try to keep the reference close to your drawing if you can, because the further away it is, the more information you tend to drop out. So this is what we're going with. We're going with this sort of lopsided peanut shape, right? And a couple of things to remember with this subject. we've got obviously the mouth is a very strong feature in a comedian, and the eyes. So those things, including the nose, whatever shape that is sort of like this teardrop effect. That's contained in this area, which I like to think of as a Mexican mask. There's a few cartoonists and caricaturists call this the T-zone or the mask zone. Sometimes it's just, the eyes and the nose. But I like to think of everything kind of referring to one another. The lines, the muscles that go around the face, around the eyes, link up with the muscles around the nose and around the mouth. And they're all attached by these pulley systems, these, what do they call them, transverse muscle attachments. So it's quite detailed in all the face, the structure of the face. So you can't really say, well, like a great ape, like a monkey, the same. It's the same muscles, obviously, as mammals, any mammal. Dogs, monkeys, cats, bunnies, whatever. So it's the same number of muscles, but we have a very particular usage for these muscles, and they're not really environment-based. So obviously the eyes, there's sort of ring muscles around the eyes are designed to protect the eyes from damage, from sun or impact, but they're also there to help communicate, and we communicate really, really well. So in talking about communication, obviously a comedian's stock in trade is being able to communicate physically a story or a narrative. So jokes, punchlines, etc., that are punctuated by these expressions and body language, etc. So we're going to concentrate a lot of our efforts on the relationships between the eyes, the nose, and the mouth in this sort of T-zone, this mask area. I like to think of it like a Mexican mask, like a luchador mask, where you have this. It's a mask, but certain things are cut out. All right, so that's the one thing we're going to talk about. Also, because we're drawing on tone paper, we're going to be using some brown pencils. This is a Prismacolor. This is a Tuscan red. This is a polychromo. I think it's a terracotta or something, or Indian red. And there's another Prismacolor, and that's like a terracotta. So these are like reddish brown. Okay, so the representative of Conti's crayon, that sort of style of brown. We're also going to be using some white pencils. That was a polychromo. This is a Prismacolor. The difference between a Prismacolor and a polychromo. Polychromos are harder than the Prismacolor. This is a black polychromo, and that's quite hard, and that's going to give us some nice hard lines and edges and things like that. We're also going to probably be using some Posca pens, little permanent marker. Well, they're permanent markers, but they're not like textures. They're not like fine liners or anything. They won't sink through the paper, which is kind of handy, isn't it? So, getting back to this, we're going to structure it with going to do the drawing with a bias towards the shaded area on the right. So that's going to give us a sense of roundness and form to the drawing. Alright, so I've not an easy character to capture in thumbnail, but I've been able to transfer this thumbnail. I've sketched it up again on the paper a bit bigger so I can play with it a little bit more. And this is the result. So let's have at it and get some more details happening in this in Jerry's face. Alright, so it's going to be a bit difficult. As I said, there's a little bit of problems with the eyes, with the details. Some of the details are not as sharp as I would like, but we're going to try to persist with it. So let's try and get down into the subject itself. So after roughing out the thumbnail, what I thought, the crown represents the king of comedy. How's that? So I thought we'd get a chance to establish some of the details. So for me, the process of caricature is simplification. So you create something that has a very simple, articulate shape, and then from that extrapolate a lot of the details from the reference that you're able to glean from the photograph, and that everything that's relevant, of course, I mean that only goes without that. It's part of the deal, isn't it? Really, you don't want to put in things just for the hell of it, just that might confuse the issue. So apart from the recognizable aspects of the face, which we're going to try to get within this mask area, so the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, they have a certain relationship. Part of that relationship is, definitely with size and proportion, but it's also with the details. Like that saying, the devil's in the details. Well, the devil's in the details with the caricature, because everything that you look at, the overall contour, the shape of the face, it's evident in the minuscule. So the contours of each element, so the contours around the nose and where the nose joins with the eyebrows, it's all part of the gesture, or the continuous lines that are singularly descriptive of the form or of the character. He's got a very interesting boyish haircut, which is quite a low. It's very low on the brow. Actually, much lower than I've anticipated for. But this is probably going to work for us. And there's a little bit of fuzziness, almost a buzz cut at the back. So interesting. It's very interesting watching his movies. I quite like his early ones. Sort of like I have the same feeling with a lot of actors and comedians' work. I quite like their early days when they're formulating their style or their technique. They have a certain freshness and a fearlessness which they don't have when they're later on in their career. Example like Elvis. I quite like King Creole and the rockabilly days, not the after '68, where it became more of a showman. But then, different strokes for different folks. People like different things about somebody. That's fine. And I quite like his early black and white days. So when he started making his own films, I think the Delicate Delinquent was one of my favorites. It's black and white, and he still had a lot of that boyish energy, that awkwardness from the Dean Martin days. So I thought it worked quite well. Disorderly, Orderly was good too, but again, the slicker the production became, the differences started to show up. So it became more kind of like a formula. You know, it had to have that. He had to have the cardigan, the blue cardigan or the yellow cardigan, or whatever. So it's primary colours. I don't know why. I think that was. I'm not sure how that it just really occurred to me that was a shtick. That was a thing, wasn't it? Those cardigans. And I think it was something to do with the standing out in the picture plane as much as you can. So obviously, the cleaner the line, the sharper the color, or the simpler the color, the more contrasting, I guess, the more complementary the color, the better it stands out from the background. So you could tell at any given moment who is the star of the show. I think that's an interesting observation. Didn't occur to me before about that. So there you go, that's for free. Part of the style of the film. I don't know who came up with that, whether it was the director originally or Jerry. It's probably Jerry. I think it would be part of the shtick, part of the accoutrement of the performer, to come up with props that help, sell the character. The simpler the prop, the more identifiable the prop, I think the better the memorability. There's a certain watching a Jerry Lewis film, there is a certain familiarity with a lot of the films, like Nutty Professor, for example. The main character, the Nutty Professor himself, when he becomes Buddy Love, has that sort of lounge suit, the confident performer. So I guess that's more like what I was going to say with my particular preferences for Jerry Lewis material would be something akin to the difference between the Nutty Professor and Buddy Love, right, in the film. So I kind of like the Nutty Professor times. I watch it, but I think the timing is different. The presentation is different with his later work, and I just prefer the zaniness or the energy of the earlier Jerry Lewis. So this is interesting. We're getting into a zone here where I'm not quite familiar with the anatomy. I can't quite see through the blurry, grainy photo exactly what's going on. So I have to guess. And I guess wrong. So there's a left and right complement to anatomy, and you have to respect that. So if you have the upper lid's visible under the muscle of the brow in the left, then it should be visible on the other side of the face. So this is what I meant by scanning left and right, up and down. So across the face, just this area, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Keep your eye on that, the relationship between them and how they relate to one another. Okay, because that's really indicative. That indicates how far you're going away from of what's relevant, what's important. So obviously you're looking for keys to personality, you're looking for anatomical references, how things work. but also individual forces happening in the face. So sometimes, what I like to do is to mask off areas and compare. So compare eyes to eyes without the features, and then sort of pull back and reveal the relationship between each one. So ideally, muscles line up, they join up to create a sort of a continuous gesture or movement throughout the muscles, throughout the face. So Jerry has a very, very muscular face, and we've spoken about this before. It's kind of part of the stock in trade for a comedian to have that range of possibilities, of physical possibilities that they can use and play with. You need those muscles developed, right? Like a bodybuilder, like a runner has to have strong legs. So after years of training, his legs are a lot stronger certainly than mine, than most of us. It's the same thing with an actor or a comedian. They have, especially a comedian, there is a lot of work that they put behind the scenes which we don't see. A lot of practice and tuning, fine-tuning, timing, etc. We just don't see that. I love the fact that pencil can have a beautiful pen-like effect of, cross-hatching to just help darken some of the tone. The paper's doing a lot of beautiful tonal work for us, and then we're free to sort of enhance it slowly and organically as we go. Alright, so there's some things here which we need to correct with some of the movements, some of the orchestrations of the pencil. Brown pencil, very descriptive in representing flesh tones, because flesh is warm, usually, living things. People, drawing people is one of the most satisfying things I've ever encountered, and I'll tell you why. I'll be brutally honest with you. I'm not that keen on portraits. I do portraits, but I'm not keen on them because they tend to be extremely... You tend to be very judgmental about portraits and less experimental a lot of the time. So, there's this more pressure on you, I guess, to be more photographic with the result. The likeness has to be just so, With a caricature, you're free to explore things. There's a certain capricious freedom with cartoons and caricatures because it's meant to be an extension of your entertainment. Essentially, you're doing this for yourself, so it's entertaining yourself. And as such, of course, it's fun. So, there shouldn't be any pressure applied to the process. Just sort of relax. Relax, guy. Yeah. Take it easy. That's Saddam Hussein from South Park. It's actually one of my favourite South Park characters, Saddam. I don't know if he spoke like that, though. He could have, who knows? Alright, so we're just going to sharpen things up now with the red pencil, with the brownish red pencil. I just want to get some nice sharper elements, and then we're going to sharpen it again with the black. But before we do that, I want to try to get enough details in there to prove to myself we're going in the right direction. Okay, cool. Very, very. So teeth have their own, every person has their own, teeth have a basic structure and texture and things, but then there's a certain individuality in the way that the teeth are positioned in the mouth, and also their individual contour. So as I was talking to you about the contours in general, there's individual contours. So there's the overall shape, which we are, in a sense, simplifying and exaggerating. And there's also individual things, elements within that we also simplify and exaggerate. So this is the part over here we're going to find a little bit of a problem, because I've actually put too much detail into the mouth, which is distracting. So I'm going to take that away, like so. There you go. Now it makes a bit more sense. So textures, the pencil lines capture contours, shapes. They also capture texture. So it's like the pencil itself. This technique is able to pretty much handle 7 elements of art all in one. So you've got the line work, which is represented by the distinctive caricatured contour, the exaggerated contour, and you've got the shape itself, which starts from the very primitive beginning, this peanut shape. Okay, that's the basis of it, the structure. Then we go into the form, which is this three-dimensional aspect of the drawing, so make it more sculptural in itself, three-dimensional. Then we're looking at the tonal build-up of tone, the tonal relationships between light and shade, and the white pencil, and indeed the black pencil is going to help us with that too. There's also the texture, so you can see here with this sort of crosshatch effect for the pencil, it's giving it a very organic, loose, but still under control, a technique. So what else? There's, I'm implying a spatial relationship with this this shape that it's contained within. So that gives us an idea of a concept of negative space, which is the space around the subject. So it has, in effect, some form of environment. So it doesn't sort of float on the page. It has a form, a structure. And be careful with shadows on teeth. There's also a color, because, as I said to you before, even though we're using a very limited range, the warmth of the pencil, the red pencil, the terracotta, the clay colors, they're very nice to draw people with. They're very nice to draw living things with, not just people, but animals as well. But living things have warmth, and that's part of the ability of the pencil to it's able to do that. It's able to describe that quality. Right, so there's some very distinctive bow tie. Okay, I think that will probably do. A lot of comedians, I don't know why it was sort of a thing. I don't know where it came from. The cat schools probably, this bow tie thing. Sort of like a prop that a lot of comedians wore. And they could wear it with sports jackets or with dinner jackets or tuxes or whatever. It's just something that's like a prop that became something familiar. You can see it in a lot of comedians' wardrobe. Okay, so now we've got a bit of dark elements. We're going to help that along with the black pencil, and I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because from this angle the pencil's glossy, so I can't see if it's building up enough contrast, but hopefully it will. So again, like going harder with the brown pencil before to establish more contrast, I'm helping it again with the black. Now the black works well over the warmth of the brown pencil because it gives it a warmth that it wouldn't normally have. So again, we're going to be careful with the irises, because irises, when you fill them in, they kind of denote different things. He has got light eyes. I mean, there's sort of a light brown or hazel. So tonally, I'm thinking don't make the pupils too big. So I could go a bit thick and thin with the line work here and there. I think certainly the external contours of the face. It's an idea. Let's be going up. Let's may as well lean on the paper so that we don't smudge the pencil work. The pencil's quite hardy. It won't smudge too much, but it will. You know, the hotter your hand gets, I guess, the more pressure you put on the paper. Now, I like to use this pencil as a sort of a way of doing a very slow version of a pen line or brush line, so it's got a thick and thin quality to it, and I like that because it gives it a sense of impact. We might even go over this again with the black brush, but for the moment I think we're quite safe with this. So it's important to look at, don't outline things just for the sake of outlining things, but keep it within, you know, a proportionate level of dark or light. So have a think about the tonal qualities that you're applying there with the pencil. So some areas you can see I'm outlining, and the flexibility of the black pencil is really cool because it tells you it can describe line and it can describe tone very, very quickly, very well. So over here with the brows, obviously I'm just helping with the darkening some of the structure that's already been drawn in. Cool. Now hopefully this, because this photo is blurry, I might lose my way, lady. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hopefully not stuff this up. But you know, It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. It could happen. It could very easily not work. You know, I could take a faux pas, make a wrong turn, in Albuquerque, and end up in the South Pole. So we're going to try to try to adhere to. We're looking at the reference, but I'm looking at the reference. I am, but I'm also thinking about what it is I'm drawing, and what's the basic anatomical structure of the thing that I'm drawing. So. Oh, that's a very important thing. Oh, I can't do it. I can't do that. Again, you know, looking left and right, making sure that the highlights are in roughly the same position. Sometimes I'll correct highlights. I'll show you. So this is let me just draw something very quickly here to describe what indeed is up with this. So okay, so let's try to let's do this. Pretend that I can draw. We're drawing the pupils, and we're putting the highlights. Now, that means that the highlight is unnaturally in the same position on both eyes, and of course, the curvature of the head means that the eyeballs. You know, if you've got a light source, this is overhead. Okay, so these are imagine the eyeballs sticking out from the head, right? Which they don't normally do, but let's pretend they do. If you had a light, of course, it would hit at different parts of the eyeball. So this point here would be in a different position, okay? But what happens is when you start messing with that, it kind of, when you look at it, when you're drawing it, it sort of makes the eye look cross-eyed or wall-eyed, which is the opposite, sort of looking in or looking out. So just artificially correcting them and making them the same as much as you can. You vary them a little bit, but sort of correcting what the photograph gives you is artificially is a way of keeping a handle on anything that may distract. And even though, you know, optically, obviously, it would be in a different position, you know, it makes sense to be in a different position. It just looks funny. Okay, so that just comes from like experience of frustration, of years of frustration. Why doesn't this work? Why does it look cross-eyed? Just be aware that, you know, drawings are different. The drawing itself is different than a photograph. Okay, we can allow for things in photographs. We are quite aware that photographs are photographs, but with drawings, of course, it becomes a different thing. It's not a photograph. It's a different thing, altogether different process. And we look at it and it feels differently to us. It doesn't sound right, does it? But it's true. We just relate differently to a painting or a drawing or something that's not a photograph. So I tend to think the more errors you put in, the more photographic it becomes, because photos are they're just full of mistakes that shouldn't be there. I hope that makes sense. I know it doesn't sound right, does it? It sounds counterintuitive, but trust me, you're not drawing photographs. You're drawing a drawing, and that's a different process. Something totally different. So take heart, then, the computers will have about as much success as monkeys and elephants painting pictures, drawing pictures. They won't be able to do it. It may look like they're doing it. You may see it on the news, the weekend news or whatever, but I promise you, in practice, it does not work. Least of all, the narrative, the storytelling ability of drawings, they don't mean anything to monkeys. Doesn't matter how clever they are, how many cigarettes they smoke. It doesn't make them Picasso. So the word monkey actually means, it's a copy. It's an ape. Ape means copy. So it's a copy of human. That you might think, well, that's very unfair to monkeys. Well, yeah, I guess so, but in the early days when they were naming the natural world, of course, they came up with these notions. The first thing that you notice about monkeys is how closely how human they are, right? And we attach these things to animals. We humanize them because it's part of our experience. We are humans after all. I suppose in a dog's life they'd be canining us. They would be turning us, oh, that human acts very dog-like. Part of our experience, really. So, getting back to Jerry. So, growing up with Jerry, it was a sort of a Saturday afternoon friend that you'd see every few weeks in repeats. The Jerry Lewis experience, the Jerry Lewis movies. The guy in the yellow cardigan, or the blue cardigan, or the red cardigan. Would be primary colours. Just simplifying some of the shapes there. Now I realise that the glaring fact here is I haven't finished the hair, and I'm getting to that. So I'm not quite sure how I should attack it. There's sort of a buzz cut fuzziness at the back, which I think is a very signature look and feel to the texture. And there's a length at the front, especially this part, which gives him that very youthful appearance. I've done quite a few comedians. I like the challenge. They have a certain structure to their face, which I think is good for understanding how things work. Muscles. The face is full of muscles. Muscles on the face. Very muscular. So it's kind of like if you're drawing a body and you want to show anatomy, you would show muscles that have a tendency to look muscular. Right? Maybe not overly muscular, but muscular nonetheless. So it's a study of form. So this is a study. All faces are great to draw, and I usually, not always, but I usually choose like a 3/4 view so I can get a little bit of the side information, a little bit of the front information, and it just helps establishing a more of a three-dimensional approach to the drawing itself. So as far as picking the reference is concerned, it's really a personal thing, something that you respond to, so
people respond to different things. You might respond to a crazy expression.
Or a more sedate expression, depends. See how beautifully pencil can describe fur or hair. It just does, It just does. It's a magical thing. So whenever you get a chance to do that, it's fun to do this sort of scribble hatch effect, cross hatch effect, isn't it? It's nice.
It just feels it feels good.
Wow, it's fun. Whee! It's cool. I love that. It's cool, spiky, but blunted the pencil. Okay, I've done a little bit of work on the ribbon, the name ribbon. I like the putting name underneath the caricature, and I like the sort of ribbon effect that I create, and I did a little bit of a flourishy ribbon in respect to the character, I think. He's, after all, the king of comedy.
He's the king of comedy. Lady. It's Jerry Lewis.
Okay. All right, we've got a white pencil, put some black down, lay down some black, lay down the law. So we're going to create more form now with the using the grey paper, right? So we're creating more form with the white pencil. Might be handy to get rid of some of the brown pencil over there. So it's going to give us nice areas of shine and also bring a lot of the form forward in space. So it does both things.
Simultaneous, like.
There we go. Quite like that. That's a good effect. So you don't use it to color in, right? You use it to establish a hierarchy, light and shade. Okay. And you use the same sort of slow build-up of cross-hatching to create a gradient effect, but keep it very organic. The idea is not to hide the texture. You're not using pencil to create airbrush. You're creating pencil to create pencil, if that makes sense. It should never look like another material. It's like watercolor should not look like airbrush. Watercolor should look like watercolor. Airbrush should look like airbrush. Oil paint should look like oil paint, etc., etc., etc. Ad infinitum. So it's very important to, be aware of the properties of the material that you're working with. If you're working digitally, of course, you can do basically anything you want. You could start with an oil painting and end up as a watercolor or a gouache painting or something like that. So it's like a whole art store in your computer, on your iPad or whatever. So, again, it may look like I'm colouring in, but I'm just upping the contrast a little bit on the teeth so that they are whiter than the surrounding tissues. And then I'm going to put in some of the reflections because it's shiny, needs to be a very reflective surface. Again, same with the lips. The lips are shiny and they need to be able to show that in the texture. So it's a matter of establishing a hierarchy, isn't it, of light to dark in multiple areas, just to create the right amount of detail, light and shade detail. So details are not just the linear properties of the face, but also the elements of texture, shine, color that you can describe. And keep everything proportionate, yeah? So, that's good. What do I mean by proportionate? The right level of light and shade, the right level of color, the right level of detail. So nothing that stands out too much. Right, there we go. Quite happy with that. There's some nice things happening there. Let's try and get some. I'm going to have a go at this is a Zig Brush Pen, so the ink is in the handle. You squeeze it, it comes out through the brush itself. So what I'm doing with this is just, again, what I did with the black pencil, and just help out a little bit with the contrasts. Just make the black even blacker in certain areas, not everywhere, but just keep it proportion. And of course the brush can give you a brush edge, so thick and thin properties around the face. Kind of nice. You can see that the more you start to fill in this, the less of the pupils, they start to fill in too much, so they change a lot of the it changes the expression. You may not be aware of it, but it does slightly. And it's a cumulative effect, so the more things that you start to alter from the reference, the more these effects build up. Brush pens are really nice because they have a tapered edge, a tapered end, sorry. You can, you know, that ends with a point. Really nice for this teeth area because they can really cut into this, the mouth to make it sharper. I think it just makes the teeth shape stand out a little bit better. So again, you know, like you don't use too much white, you don't use too much brush. It's not necessary to go over everything that you've done. You just need to help it out here and there. Establish some darker elements. And that should be fine. There you go. Alright, so very close here. I'm going to get some, this is a brush pen, a white Posca marker brush pen. There's also a point version. And I'm going to use that to kick up some of the contrasts even again. You know, so the way that I did it with the black, I'm also going to be doing it with the white. So, and it's quite a nice effect over the, why isn't this working? Interesting, it seems to have dried out. So it's an interesting contrast. Now, as I said, I explained the light reflections in the eye to try to keep them at the same sort of side, same position on both left and right eyes, even though it wouldn't really happen like that so much in real life. It stops the eyes going cross-eyed. That's nice. Building up the shine in areas slowly. Okay, here we go. Because I've established this side light on the nose, I'm going to continue it over some of the other shapes that are on that side of the head. So you can see it like there's a sort of a rim light effect, right? So even if it isn't in the reference, I kind of like to put that in here and there because it makes the figure or the face or the head look more three-dimensional. I've mussed that up, haven't I? Let's fix that. It's just to help make the drawing look more three-dimensional. It's establishing a more lights than one. So if you're lighting, those of you that do photography or film, you'll notice that it's a portrait technique, really. It's like to create a dramatic accent on the outline or the edge of the form. And it just helps with the three-dimensional properties. Makes it look more 3D, which is what we want. We want a three-dimensional type of drawing. Let's actually help this texture bit. Yeah, might lighten that too while we're there. And it might sort of help this area. And while we did that, we may help that. And just smooth this transition. It's got a plunger at the tip, the edge, at the end, sorry. Just pushes more pigment out. Let's try to get it out. There we go. That's better. So. That's better. Okay, that'll do. All right. Put that cap back on. Fix up some of this. Because the brushes are not really, they're not as, they don't make cross-hatching as well as the pencil. Pencil's sort of like a nice, you can very easily control the amount, the pressure. Controls the amount of white. Oh, that was a strange technique. All right. Okie doke. What else can we do? Let's make that a bit darker. Color that in. Alright, so nearly there. I'm going to get some Posca black. And there's a nice big one. This is this thinner one that's able to cut in. And I'm just going to create some more drama by having the face stick out from the background. And the way to do that is to make the background lighter or darker, just in the area of the negative space. So not everywhere, but just enough. So I'll use a thicker marker, a thicker Posca, to fill in. I'm just cutting into the shapes. I'm not going up to the brush line. I'm just staying a little bit away. So it creates a sort of a double line effect. And it's just part of the thing that I found I like, because you're not hiding the contour. You're just drawing attention to it. Why did I start down there if I'm right-handed? Now I've got to go back. Okay, so Just cutting in. Just cutting in. That's all I'm doing, really. You can rest on the knuckle, I guess. I don't want to put the paper down either because that area is quite wet. Now, Poscas are better than Indian ink. They dry a lot faster and they dry flat. Indian ink has sometimes an undesirable effect of drying unevenly. It tends to pool, and in the pooling of the paint, of the ink, it can stay shiny, so it doesn't go flat all over, which this does, right? You really do need some kind of a consistency for this to work, because you know the flat background actually helps with the clarity of the drawing. So I'm making the tone paper effect a little bit more dramatic. That's all I'm doing. Slow down, take your time, cut in, don't destroy. See how it's gone up there and destroyed that line under the nose? I might actually have to fix that in a minute. I don't have any grey pencils, but I need to establish that again. So keep it away from the contour. So the contour is not swallowed up by the black background. Oh, overall I think it's quite a nice drawing. Again, I think it looks enough like him for my purposes. So again, this is a Posca marker. It fills in. It's like a beautiful. This is even better than graffiti markers because they can be very easily removed from bus seats, which are good. Not that I'm advocating that, but if you're going to deface public property, please do so with something that can be erased easily. So we don't need to use solvents and things. Alright. How's that? Use a softer one. Just in that area, just help it out. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Okay, I've got another white Posca here. So we're going to be this. All of this, it looks patchy now, but I promise you, this will dry very flat, absolutely flat, and be beautiful. I'm shutting up because I can't speak and spell at the same time. Alright, well, that's white too. Why didn't I fill that in? That was silly. Yeah, that'll do. Nice. So it's got sort of a lounge suit, right? Looks a bit like Buddy Love, but with a nicer personality. Yeah, you can see it's drying quite flat. It will dry absolutely flat, I promise you. So that would be very nice. Let's have a little gander at what we've done here. This is Jerry. As you can see, it's quite a blurry photograph, isn't it? So I've had to read a lot into that. So it's a really interesting character, Jerry Lewis. And this is my version of Jerry Lewis, and this is Frantz Kantor saying to you, I will catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.